Okay, so
And
thank you very much for having me. So my name is Michael Murphy and I'm a final year student studying psychology. And for my final year project, I chose to study whether experiencing loneliness would lead people to perceive their lives as less meaningful, and if people who experience decreased meaning as a result of loneliness will try to compensate for their decreased meaning through identifying with someone who shares an identity with them. And in this case, it was the identity of being Irish. So why study loneliness? So a lot of research has established that loneliness is associated with a wide range of psychological disorders and problems, including anxiety, depression, and substance abuse. Research has also linked loneliness to several poor physical health outcomes and increased mortality. So a lot of research really has shown that loneliness can lead to a lot of adverse psychological and physical health issues really. And the Irish Loneliness Task Force in a 2018 report argued that loneliness is actually a growing economic concern in Ireland. And to back that up, they cited a 2017 UK report that stated that loneliness actually costs UK employers approximately £2.5 billion a year. So it really does impact really society negatively on a whole. And we actually have researchers from UL who during COVID-19 found that loneliness increased risk of developing depression amongst people living with cancer. So it really is quite relevant right now, and especially in the times that we're living in. And then why meaning in life? Well, meta-analysis have linked meaning in life to positive physical health outcomes and also psychological well-being. So the aim is to hopefully through studying loneliness and meaning, we hope that the research we're doing could hopefully impact future research in a positive way, social policy and health interventions for tackling and reducing loneliness. So in terms of past research, there's a large body of research that already exists that links social exclusion and social ostracism to decreased meaning in life. However, in terms of loneliness, there's only actually one peer-reviewed, well-done study that has examined the relationship between loneliness and meaning in life. And this study found that self-reported loneliness was associated with reduced meaning in life. So this study, alongside the studies that examine social exclusion and social ostracism's effects on meaning in life, have helped to support our hypothesis that recalling lonely experiences will lead people to experience loneliness and also subsequently perceive their own lives as less meaningful. So then in terms of theoretical underpinnings for our research, we have used the meaning maintenance model. And this model suggests that people have belongingness needs and that these needs, when satiated, can provide people with meaning. But the model also posits that if these needs are threatened through things such as experiencing loneliness or social exclusion, people can experience decreased meaning. And the model also premises that if people experience decreased meaning, there are several domains such as belongingness, self-esteem needs. Another is symbolic immortality needs that they'll try to boost to compensate for their decreased meaning. So these needs can be boosted through identifying with certain groups or trying to take more control of certain aspects of one's life. So the model is quite complex, but very, very interesting. And researchers here in UL, Dr. Eric AICUR, actually tested one of the model's predictions when he demonstrated that experiencing boredom, which is considered a threat to meaning in life, he demonstrated that people who experience high levels of boredom subsequently experience decreased meaning in life. And he showed that this could be compensated for by identifying with someone who that person shared an identity with. So in his research, participants experience boredom, and then as a result experience decreased meaning. And they were provided with an opportunity to, I suppose, bolster their identity with another person who had a similar identity, which in that study was being Irish. And he found that people who experienced decreased meaning as a result of boredom identified much more strongly with their shared identity. And then they discussed that as a result of trying to compensate for the decreased meaning after experiencing boredom. So we aim to do this, test this with loneliness instead of boredom. So what did our study look like? Well, we used Qualtrics survey to create the study, and our survey design was a between subjects experimental design. So in the experiment, participants were randomly assigned to one of two conditions, either being a loneliness condition, which was the experimental condition, or a belonging condition, which was the control condition in our experiment. And once assigned, participants were asked to recall experiences that were related to their conditions. So either recall and write about times they felt lonely or times they felt belonging, depending on their condition. So then after, both groups reported their perceived loneliness, and they also reported their perceived sense of meaninglessness. And then participants after read a fake scenario where an in-group member, someone they shared an identity with, so in this case an Irish person, was attacked by an out-group member, and in this case that was an English person. And what happened next was participants were asked to imagine that they were a judge and to give a prison sentence to the person who attacked the member of their in-group, so the person who attacked the Irish person. And then we used one-way ANOVAs and analyses of covariance to examine the data and to test our hypothesis. So in terms of our research findings, we found that people in the loneliness group perceived their lives as significantly less meaningful or perceived higher meaninglessness scores than people in the belongingness group. So this does support our hypothesis that loneliness can lead people to perceive their lives as less meaningful. And then for our second hypothesis, our data was actually inconsistent with it. So social identification wasn't actually used to compensate for decreased meaning. There were actually no significant differences between the two groups. So in terms of what this means, well, I've only actually recently collected my data finally, and I've only recently analysed it. So unfortunately, I haven't actually come to fully formulated conclusions about what it means. But what our data does mean is loneliness, the support for loneliness really being part of the existential psychological framework. So what that means is it further supports that loneliness does lead to decreased perceived meaning in life. There does seem to be a relationship there, and that's definitely an area that could be worth studying further. So then I'd just like to thank everyone from CTL for allowing me to present. I'd like to thank everyone for listening. I really appreciate it. And I'd like to thank my supervisor, Dr. Andrew B. Moynihan. He's been brilliant all year and just has made this a very enjoyable experience.